welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing okay and are well. It is a fresh morning today. It's not too cold, but it's not raining, which is the most important thing, so it's all good. And that's my weather briefing for the morning, if you like. So today we look at the Great Train Robbery, guys. A series of events that happened quite a few years ago now, but has absolutely fascinated the world since it happened. A series of events that happened during the course of the robbery, if you like, and afterwards as well, for many, many years. So today we visit the actual bridge where the train was stopped. We also visit the Thames Valley Police Museum, which was really cool because they've actually got real evidence that was recovered from the robbery itself, and that was really cool to see. We also visit a couple of houses that are connected to the robbery. So the home of Ronnie Biggs and the house that Buster Edwards lived in for a couple of weeks after the robbery. So I'm going to give you more info on all of this during the video, of course. We also visit, along with those, we also visit a couple of final resting places. So the final resting place of Mr. Bruce Reynolds, who of course was the main man who put the plan together and organised it, as well as the final resting place of Mr. Charlie Wilson, who was part of the robbery as well. So along with those, I thought it would have been pretty cool to visit the Star Tavern Pub, which was a really nice pub in a really posh part of London. And that's where the gang met to put some of the plan together. So we visit the pub and have a drink in there as well. So I do hope you enjoyed this one, guys. It did take me a while to put together, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I found it really fascinating. So please do subscribe and like the video. Why would you not subscribe? And I'm going to give you more info on the Great Train Robbery. On the 8th of August 1963, the post office mail train was travelling from Glasgow down to London. On its normal typical run, the train would normally be carrying around £300,000. On this particular journey, it was transporting considerably more, around £2.5 million in cash, which is roughly 50 million pound in today's money. And this was because the weekend that had just gone happened to be a bank holiday weekend up in Scotland. At around 3 AM, as the train passed through the Leighton Buzzard area, train driver Jack Mills noticed a red light up ahead. Although extremely unusual and unexpected, he slowed the train down, bringing it to a standstill. His fellow train crewman David Whitby jumped down from the carriage onto the tracks to investigate. The green light that should have been visible had been covered up, so I'm not sure if it was like a glove or a sock, but basically they had literally put something over the top so it couldn't be seen. And the red light, which captured the attention of Jack Mills, had been plugged into a battery to make it work. David Whitby also attempted to use the trackside phone to try and contact the station manager or the signal manager to try and find out what was going on, but the telephone cables had been cut. This was the start of an elaborate plan that would be called the Great Train Robbery. It would go down in history as one of the largest robberies ever to be carried out. So the gang of men that had put the plan in place, they overpowered Jack Mills and David Whitby. In the process, Jack Mills was brutally hit across the head, severely injuring him. And from there, they uncoupled the rear carriages, leaving only the front engine locomotive and the two carriages which were directly behind, which was transport with the money. So the plan was to move the train further up onto the nearby bridge and unload the money onto the waiting vehicles that the robbers had put in place. And the only problem was the gang member that was brought in to drive the train wasn't familiar with that type of locomotive, so basically didn't know how to drive the train. The gang then forced the train driver to drive the train. Although they'd severely beaten him, they forced him to move the train, stopping it onto the bridge. Once there, the gang set up like a human chain and they proceeded to unload the sacks full of cash onto the waiting vehicles. And I think they had like a truck that they painted yellow, along with a couple of Land Rovers, and the Land Rovers had been fitted with duplicate plates. And So once the vehicles were full, they then drove to Leverslade Farm, which they had pre-purchased. And the plan was to lie low at the farm, let the dust settle surrounding the robbery, divide the money up while there, and then after a couple of weeks move on to the next stage of the plan of what they'd arranged. The farm had also been stocked with supplies, tinned food, sleeping bags, and lots of bits and pieces to see them through for a couple of weeks. And they passed the time while there listening to police radios using a scanner, as well as playing Monopoly with real money. And so you can imagine a robbery of this scale and magnitude. As soon as the news broke, if you like, it was huge, it was massive. It was all over the news, on the TV, all over the newspapers, and it created also a great deal of interest from the British public. And one of the neighbours of the farm became suspicious of the initial comings and goings that he'd seen. I think he clocked the men going in and out and the vehicles as well. So he contacted police and let them know what he'd seen. So on the money side, it does vary slightly depending on the source and what you read on the amount that each individual member of the gang received. But it's generally believed that each member of the gang that was directly involved and at the farm received £150,000 in cash, which is £2.5–3 million in today's money. So after a couple of days at the farm, the men realised what was going on. I think from listening to the radios, they'd worked out that they were only 27 miles from the bridge where they'd unloaded the money off of the train. And they'd realised that the police had implemented what was called a dragnet tactic. So they were basically covering the whole local area, so it wouldn't be too long before they would arrive at the farm, if you like. So after a couple of days, they all headed out individually onto the next stage of what they'd arranged. But before they left, they'd also made arrangements to have the farm burnt down. And I'm not sure if this was with a group of guys or with an individual, but they paid the money and the plan was to burn the farm down, get rid of any evidence. Unfortunately for the gang or the robbers, they took the money, whoever it was, but they got cold feet, so they didn't go through with it. So the men left by the time the police turned up, but obviously the farm was still there, and the police found an absolute treasure trove, a mountain of evidence. I think they found the Monopoly board with fingerprints on it, tin food that had fingerprints on it. They found like a driving license, checkbooks, the empty mail bags that was originally on the train, an absolute mountain of intel. And they gave the farm the nickname the One Big Clue, because it basically gave them so much information that the police then knew after they found the farm who they were looking for. So it's been over 60 years since the actual robbery, and the world continues to be fascinated by the Great Train Robbery. Hollywood films have been made about the robbery itself and some of the individual robbers, rather. Documentaries have been made, books have been written, and even a hit song was written and released on one of the robbers living abroad. So we are at the bridge where the Great Train Robbery took place in August 1963. And I think there is a minor sign just here. Train Robbers Bridge. So on the evening, the train robbers actually stopped the train about a quarter of a mile that way, so sort of over in that direction. stopped it on top of the bridge here, and then they unloaded it, literally unloaded all the money over this bridge into vehicles, and then literally drove off in that direction where the blue truck is in front of us. And there used to be a bigger sign here apparently, but it got stolen. But that is the bridge where the Great Train Robbery took place. So the memorial sculpture for Mr. Bruce Reynolds is just here on the left. See if we can get a bit closer. And I believe that the sculpture was actually created by his son Nick Reynolds. And Bruce Reynolds' ashes and his wife's ashes were both scattered here. Bruce Reynolds, 1931-2013. And then just below that, his wife Angela, 1948-2010. And then just on the right side, I don't know if you can see it, you've actually got the word C'est la vie, which was the words that he said when he was arrested in Torquay in 1968. But that is the man that planned the Great Train Robbery and put it all together. And of course, Highgate is a beautiful cemetery with lots of well-known and very famous people in it. So this is the Star Tavern Pub, where they organised and planned the Great Train Robbery. And it is on like a really lovely, beautiful mews. So we are coming up to the bar area upstairs in the Star Tavern, which is where they did some of, or most of the planning for the Great Train Robbery. And apparently they would sit just in front of us here where that Star Special board is. And it is actually really nice up here. It's a pretty cool area. And of course, just above the bar, this very room was the location for most of the planning of the Great Train Robbery, for what was then the century's biggest heist, which netted the 18-man gang 2.6 million, about 40 million in today's money. And just next to it, you can add to the history, plan your event here, and you'll have your own stories to tell, which is pretty cool. So those guys actually sat in this room and planned and organised how they stole the 2.6 million. So guys, we are in the Shepperton area and we are coming up to the house where Buster Edwards lived with his wife and young daughter after the robbery. So I think they rented the house through a local agent and were here for about 2 to 3 weeks. And during that time, as you would, they visited the local shops, fruit and veg shop, dry cleaners. I think they even used the local garage. And after a couple of weeks, the locals recognised their faces and raised the alarm. And it was around the 1st of September that the police came to the house. By that time, they had realised what was going on and they headed out to Mexico. So I'm going to turn you guys around and we're going to have a look at the house that they lived in. How amazing would it be if the walls of this house could talk? So the property where Buster Edwards stayed with his wife for a couple of weeks. So Charlie Wilson's final resting place is just here. Charles Frederick Wilson, born 30th of June 1932, at peace 23rd of April 1990, a loving husband, father and grandfather, from our hearts, all our love, in our minds, treasured memories. We've got other family members here as well that have been laid to rest with him. But this was the gentleman that was responsible for dividing up all the money from the Great Train Robbery and giving it to all the guys that were involved. So guys, we are in the Red Hill area and we are just coming up to the house that Ronnie Biggs lived in when he was arrested for the Great Train Robbery. So I'm going to turn you guys around and we're going to have a very quick look at the house. So it should be this one coming up on the right with the bin in front of it, I think. So this was the house. So we are at the Thames Valley Police training ground. Museum open. That's a good sign. Thames Valley Police Reception, Thames Valley Police Museum. So we are just inside the museum and they have got a whole area dedicated to the Great Train Robbery. And it is full of lots of interesting items. So this is the actual mugshot that was taken of Mr. Ronnie Biggs, and on the right you've got his address that he was living at, which is where we visited. Then we've got Metropolitan Police case notes and files on the investigation. think these are the pedals that came out of the van that they used. And then up here we've got bits and pieces that was recovered from the train. And some items that look like they would have come from the farm. And then just here you've got Thames Valley Police Museum presents the Great Train Robbery, and some info on the crime, the hideout, the investigation and trial. But of course, at the centrepiece, you've got the actual Monopoly board and money used by train robbers recovered from Leverslade Farm. The train robbers played using real money at Leverslade Farm. And I think the white stickers that you can see on all the bits and pieces, I've been told that they present or represent fingerprints, or where fingerprints were found. And the yellow, this is the yellow paint that they used to paint the truck that they used as part of the robbery. And then just here you've got a checkbook recovered from the farm, Westminster Bank, and driving licence belonging to one of the robbers, found at Leverslade Farm as well. And then you've got a pickaxe handle recovered from the crime location. I'm not sure if that's what they used to hit Jack Mills with. And then you've got an axe as well that was recovered from the rail van, and one of the bags that they filled with some money. And then up here you've got straps and bits and pieces from the bank that would have been used on the money, handcuffs, gloves. Bottle of wine. And then you've got a timeline from the robbery, when the alarm was raised, when the police discovered the farm. Bruce Reynolds captured in November 68, and then Ronnie Biggs, May 2001, when he handed himself in. And of course it is a museum with other bits and pieces as well, with some other really interesting bits. But the Great Train Robbery side of it does take up a huge part of it. It's just so cool. So guys, absolute madness and craziness. Such a robbery on such a huge scale, like £50 million in cash, and then to end up with £3 million in cash, or the equivalent of, and you know, to get, some of them went to prison and then escaped and went abroad, and it just goes on and on. It is absolutely unreal, the chain of events that happened. The other thing I was going to say is, I think there was like 30 people or 20 people, post office workers, that were working on the train as well, that were in the carriages that were disconnected. So maybe I'm thinking about it in today's world with the technology, but maybe did they not notice what was going on, or were they in like secure carriages and the size and scale of the train they didn't really notice? I didn't really look into that side of it, but that would be interesting to read about actually. So if you guys are aware of or have got any more info on that side of it, let me know. That would be really interesting to read about, guys. And amongst all of that, all the craziness, the money, the robbers, everything that went on, I think most importantly we need to remember the two guys, the train driver Jack Mills and the fellow crewman David Whitby. Two guys, normal guys that went to work to earn money for their families and got caught up in these events that changed their lives. I mean, Jack Mills was brutally hit over the head. Was that really necessary? Surely there was enough of the gang to restrain them and get them to do what they needed to do without beating them. Jack Mills passed away in 1970 and David Whitby passed away of a heart attack in 1972. So I think officially both of their deaths weren't directly connected to the Great Train Robbery, but I know certainly Jack Mills passed away a broken man. He never recovered psychologically or physically, and David Whitby never got over it either. Such trauma must have affected him, and of course it did. And after the robbery, to a certain point, were they expected to just carry on with their normal lives? They still had to earn money and, you know, carry on with their day-to-day stuff. So absolute crazy, absolute madness. So I think it's definitely important that we remember those two guys. They actually unveiled a plaque in Crewe, I think. I'll put that up on the screen now so you guys can see it. I took a picture of it with both of their names on them in their honour. So I think that was a really good thing. So guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you've read the books, visited the bridge, you know, watched the films. I've got any more info. Obviously this video could have been really long because there's so much to the whole story, you know, so many robbers involved. There was supposed to be an inside man inside the post office which provided the gang with all the intel. Maybe I'll do a part 2 if you guys enjoy this video. Let me know in the comments down below. So guys, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Leave a comment, as I've said a couple of times, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Take it easy. I will see you soon.